Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay? This is in the way. Okay. Well, I thought we should start, but thank you for coming. So I'm the guest host. I'm June Sekiguchi, so I know a lot of you, so thank you for coming. And so I'm an artist and a curator, and I moved down here. I need to remember to come back up here. So I moved here like 7 years ago, so I guess I can't say I'm new to Tacoma anymore. It feels like I'm new, but it's like been 7 years. So I'm an artist who couldn't afford Seattle. And so looking around, and I knew some people down here, and so as soon as I kind of directed my idea to move down here, it was just like easy, everything, I could afford it. There's community, and now there's more community because you got, new people are coming. So that's what this talk is all about, transplants. So artists who have come down for whatever reasons, mine was economic, but for whatever reason, to build community here. So I love it. I love it here because there's this great community of artists, and Tripod Talks have been a great way to plug into the community. So that's all wonderful. I have 2 plugs. Someone from Take Root, who is that? Can you share just from where you are?
That's me.
Uh-huh.
I'm Jennifer Shaw. I'm on the board of the Tacoma Tree Foundation, and I just want to make a shameless plug for our fundraiser coming up on May 31st at the Eastside Community Center. It's called Take Root, and it's going to be a wonderful evening with games and a DJ and a bar, open bar, and food. It'll be wonderful, and it's to support the cause of increasing the tree canopy in Tacoma. We have a miserable tree canopy, 20%. We have a goal in Tacoma of having a 30% tree canopy. So please come, please think about coming, joining us, and have a good time and meet all the people who are doing this good work. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you. And do you have more of these postcards so people can pick up from you?
I have one that's got my name and phone number.
And here's
on it.
one. So
So if anybody wants one, just,
yeah.
I have one.
Okay. And then
Take a
another
picture.
shameless plug. So there's one more week for my art show. It's a solo show up at Art X Contemporary in Pioneer Square in Seattle. So one more week, and I would love to meet you if you want to go, but I'm going to be there Friday and Saturday. So anyway, I'm just so thrilled. I'm so honored that these 3 artists have agreed to speak. So Richard and I have been hosting a couple of art parties because, these new artists are coming down here, and then there's a wonderful group of established artists here. So I wanted to bring them together, and they have been the best times, right? So some of them, you guys have all met, all the artists have been at the same parties, and so if anybody wants to come, tell me, because they're so much fun. So anyway, that's we kind of gathered together, and I think I knew all 3 of you a little bit. You're up in Seattle, but coming down here, I got to know you more. So thank you so much for agreeing to do this. So these guys, 3 guys, they could speak about their work for like an entire hour or more, and we're giving them 15 minutes. So thank you for shortening your talks down. And if I, you might have to, but I think you guys are ready. So Weston Lambert is the next speaker. And so Weston is an artist whose practice centers on intensifying geological processes to explore time and material transformation. And you'll understand that when you see the slides. Engaging in a condensed timeline, Lambert combines molten glass and stone using kiln work, grinding, and polishing to evoke millennia of natural erosion within a single object. His work examines dualities, transparency and opacity, ephemerality and permanence, reflecting on the equilibrium between fragility and resilience. Lambert holds an MFA from Tulane University and is exhibited around the world, including at the International Biennale of Glass, the Seattle Art Fair, the Seattle-Tacoma International Airport, where we did a project together, or he got the main project, I got the the consolation prize, but I'm happy to be next to Weston. This summer's work will be at the Museum of Northwest Art's upcoming exhibition, Through the Light, in La Conner, Washington, at Smith and Valley Gallery in Edison, Washington, and in Park City, Utah, at the Kimball Art Fair. So help me welcome Weston here. Thanks, Weston. And we can adjust this to
Perfect.
your height.
Great. Okay, can everybody hear me all right? Yeah. Okay. I am old school. I have note cards. They tend to never fail me, so I keep up with them. I'm Weston Lambert. I'm going to walk you through kind of my journey. It's a little bit untraditional with these materials, so I want to walk you through a bit of my history, how I got to using them, and then I'll walk you through some of the context and the story behind the work, and then where I'm headed in the future. So let's make sure I got this right. I'll try this one. Upstairs. Well, the first few slides aren't that relevant anyway to the part that I want to talk about. There we go. Okay. So when I started sculpting, I did a mentorship with a guy named Jose Luis Perrohe, and he taught me how to use clay and stone and how to sculpt the figure in a really traditional manner. And what he taught me was how the world impacts the body and the body interacts and impacts the world around it. So that was like my traditional training. I actually don't have any photographs from that era, but the next step was to go to the University of Hawaii, where I did my undergraduate studies. And this is an important phase because it really informs the trajectory of my entire career. I studied with Rick Mills in the glass program there, and I took every single class. I actually went out there for sculpture, but I took the glass class randomly. I fell in love with the material. It's a beautiful, like very difficult material to master. So for example, when I say difficult, if you want to make a cup, it'll take you 2 months of working every single day to make something you could buy in the store for $1. So it's a very difficult material to master. And for me, it was a pleasure to take that challenge on. Another beautiful thing about glass is that it can take on any form. It can transform into anything that you would like it to. It's sort of a chameleon that way. So I fell in love with the material. And of course, I'm taking like art history classes, learning about Michelangelo, Henry Moore, and then Brancusi, who I really fell in love with. And you'll see these influences. I show these slides to kind of show you the influences throughout the rest of my work. And this is a bird in space. So after falling in love with glass, there was a giant flood, and it completely wiped out the studio at University of Hawaii. So the first semester, fantastic, we're playing with hot glass. The river swells, there's a bunch of rain, and as you can imagine, glass that's at 2,000 degrees with room temperature water, it's not a great combo, so everything was destroyed. And as we do, we rebuilt the studio, but while that was happening, what we did was cold work. And cold work is a niche within glass where you grind and polish the glass. So it's anything that's not in the hot shop or in the kiln. So while we're rebuilding the studio, I started exploring those themes of like the body and with cold work. And what was interesting is that I found even within my love of the material of glass, there was this other even deeper obsession with this cold work method. So in hot glass, you are like, it's a really active, showy kind of thing. It's a performative deal where everybody can watch, and it's kind of this sexy thing where there's like molten glass and there's torches. Cold work is like the most boring thing that you could watch ever. It's me standing like this for days. And it's so much of a niche that most people who do glass don't really want to do cold work. They don't even want to admit that they do it because it's arduous. And where it takes physical repetition to learn glass blowing and glass working, cold working is like a psychological torment, basically. So I kind of love it, honestly. Like a speck of dust can ruin your day. You have to start over and like just 8 hours vanish. So this is one of the first pieces I made during that phase. It's called Still Awake. It was about problem sleeping, insomnia. So you can see the Brancusi head sort of influence. This is carved from a solid block of laminated windows. So they're just typical windows. If you take windows on their side and you look through them, the iron impurities basically create a green tint, which I find really beautiful. So like Coke bottle, that's from iron impurities. Really clean glass, is considered clear. I kind of like this stuff. So I carved that face out of a block of solid glass. And then this is also one of the early pieces. This is actually, it speaks to me to this idea of like resilience and resourcefulness, which is always important in the work. I also feel like there's a little bit of Henry Moore, like landscape reclining figures in these, but this is old marble tile from a renovated house that were torn out, and they're old broken windows basically that were taken out of the building. So I just took these scraps and then put them together and then carved them down and polished them into this. And there's something about that, like the idea of transformation of sort of conventional materials that I find really, the challenge is really enjoyable, but also just like, it's kind of magical, you know, in a world of like very practical things. This is another early piece. If you think long and hard or look at that for a very long time, you'll recognize those as granite countertops. So those are just granite countertops that I cut up and then combined with sheets of glass. And then about when I got done with school, my dad got sick and passed away. But before he passed away, he said, like, why don't you push? Why don't you challenge more? Why don't you, like, go big? Is kind of what he was implying, or just not playing it safe. So this was sort of an answer to that. These are all recycled sheet glass panes collected from up and down the West Coast. And what's interesting is that I couldn't have bought the texture that's within this piece. I forgot the detail in there, but the resourcefulness that went into collecting all the materials for this is kind of what defines the texture within the glass. If it was all purchased materials, they would have all the same color. So there's like something of that in this piece. And that piece actually pretty much got me into grad school, and I foolishly went to New Orleans. I say foolishly not because it's not an amazing place, it is, but because I went from Hawaii, which was ridiculously hot, and I'm terrible in hot places, to another even more ridiculously hot place. And I also decided to continue doing hot glass in a very hot place with a ton of humidity. So anyway, smart decisions. It was amazing. This is Gene Koss, who ran the program. I went out and I was there for seven years. I did my graduate work there, and we played with a ton of hot glass. I mean, literally, I think we poured 30 tons of hot glass together in the 7 years that I was there. So I loved it. We would do these crazy experiments, casting glass on the floor. There'd be hurricanes. We'd have to sleep by the furnaces to make sure they didn't go out. And I would do demos all the time, but there was always this sort of longing for the Pacific Northwest, this like need to get back. So while I was there, I was making this piece. This is a topographical map of Lake Whatcom, where I grew up. And what I did while I was there was I was taking these sheets of glass and engraving those topographical maps on them, and then sort of expanding that pattern all the way through. So this is sort of my homage to the Pacific Northwest. I feel like there's the moss and the ferns and like the lushness that's here. I made that in 2012, but it really was me kind of like missing the Pacific Northwest. This is the next piece in that series, and it's, to me, it really speaks about like the abundance of the waterways here. It's like you just look and there's water. You walk somewhere, there's water, and I miss that. So this was me kind of paying more attention to that. This is another series that I was working on, called the Moonrise series, that, again, it's like you walk through the forest, and I feel like this is something you could find in a stream, in a kind of alternate universe. It's very alien, but it also feels somehow intuitively organic. So I would imagine that these would be part of the magical landscape of the Northwest I was missing. This is another in that series. So after a brief stint from New Orleans, I moved to Utah for a bit, which made me even want the water even more. It's very dry there. And then I moved to China for a minute. That's a longer story. Then I moved back here in 2018, and I really started delving into the complex combinations of glass and stone. And I'll talk a little bit about why I wanted to do that, the drive, but I want to talk briefly just about the materials. Glass, one of the reasons glass is so challenging is that when you combine it with other colors, if you do, let's say, like a dark blue and a white, white is really stiff and blue is really soft when it gets heated up. When it cools down, those things cool at different rates. They're coefficient expansions. So they will there'll be tension that's caused between those two things. And that tension is expressed in the glass breaking, which obviously for most collectors and for me as a maker, not awesome, right? But I've worked with this company called Bullseye. They didn't pay me to be here, don't worry. They make this glass that is every color in the palette. So you can combine black, green, red, yellow, whatever you want, and you can make virtually anything. So in addition to glass being this infinitely shapeable, moldable material, you can also then color it. So it's like you can make tree bark and you can't tell until you drop it on the ground and it breaks and it's glass. So there's something about it that's magical, but it's facilitated by this really unique company. So of course, I had the glass, I had to get the rocks. So I go to Tucson every year and I buy a bunch of rocks. I sometimes go out and gather them, but this is a section of my rock stash. And I was really playing with and working with the last 8-10 years, trying to figure out what combinations and what techniques really made sense, both visually and just like through intuitive sense and feel. I'm not by any stretch into geology in terms of like the breakdown of the components of each stone. I'm very much into it based on the intuitive experiential aspect. So I will get a stone just by the way it looks, I'll play with it, I'll cut it up, I'll grind it, and I'll combine it with glass and see how it functions. That's my sort of best guess usually on how a stone is composed. So this is more of the sort of testing. This is kind of where I want to start talking about the core of these projects is really about paying attention to the different attributes of the material. But you think about like the attributes of these as stand-ins really for personality traits or groups of people. To me, they're really metaphors or autobiographical in some ways. The stone is like, if you think about it, the closest approximation to eternity that you can hold, right? This is this timeless, durable, enduring source. So it's sort of this like magical thing in and of itself that you can touch time way, way back. And then we have this glass, which is like the opposite, right? It's fragile, it's transparent. It doesn't have that same durability factor. But interestingly, if you think about it, stone is made primarily, frequently of silica. Glass is usually made of silica. So they tend to work actually fairly well together, even though they present as complete opposites. So to me, they're a stand-in for this idea of like duality and contrast and tension. So this is me continuing to play with that tension and developing sort of a language with these different color palettes. I got to the point where it just looked like a rock again. So I was doing what's called like a mokamegane or folded steel technique, like the Japanese swords. I was doing that with glass, where I would layer different sheets of glass, fuse them down, cut them up, do it again and again and again, and then put them in the mold and then cast them to fit. So the bottom half of this piece is glass, the top is malachite. And it became sort of this thing where I'd done all this work, and it became a technical flourish, not about the actual work. So that was sort of the peak, and I've stepped away from that a little bit. So now my focus is primarily on like complementing. So if anybody tries to like paint or depict a cloud or a tree or anything in nature, you quickly find out that nature is like amazing. It's incredible. You can't win when you're competing with nature. So for me, it's like the perfect collaborator. My best like attempt is to try and collaborate with it and to complement the materials, and then really to honor them as I go along. So these are there's a combination of different techniques to get the glass to do what it's doing. This is what's called an aperture pour. The glass pours through a hole in a pot into a mold. These are usually about 1,500 degrees. And every stone is different. And so what's interesting is the glass has its own attributes. The stone, even within itself, can have different attributes. And I feel like that is fairly representative of us. Like you wake up and you're in a bad mood. You can be pleasant in the afternoon the same day, right? And I feel like the stone is that as well. There are soft parts, there are brittle parts, there are very durable hard parts, and you have to treat them with this sort of care, or they break. So the top half is glass. I kind of forget, this is something I look at all the time, but the top half is glass. You can see in through the middle to the interface between the two materials. This is what's called bumblebee jasper on the bottom. By the way, if you're not familiar, if somebody doesn't know the name of a rock and they're not a geologist, they'll usually just call it a jasper. So jasper is a very wide class of stones. So that's a bumblebee jasper. I'm pretty sure it's not, but anyway. This is honeycomb calcite from Utah. It's really, really soft. And what's interesting is that even within this stone class or type. Some will behave and some will not. So you can't say, yes, I always work with this stone. It just doesn't work that way. Like today, I had a huge piece crack, and it's the same type of material. That doesn't make me leery that this one's problematic. It makes me leery of the specific one, and there's veining and all these different things that cause that. So this is peanut obsidian. It's not obsidian. It's just a fancy nickname. The glass is on top, jasper on the bottom. And then this is another edition of like my moonrise pieces. This is the dichroic glass, which is developed by NASA. It's super cool stuff. I have videos online if you want to see the entire process. I have stuff on TikTok and Instagram and YouTube. So these are the finished pieces, but you're not seeing like the sort of messy middle, I guess you would say. There's a very, you would assume that this starts as something very clean and ends as something very clean. I really love kind of throwing stuff together. That's what all of this is born of, is just slamming it together and seeing what happens and then moving on from there. I find that action is far more productive. So that's the new piece in the Fontainebleau Casino. And then these, the last little sections, these are reminiscent of those Brancusi heads. They're my soliloquy series. They're really about introspection and time alone. Cold work is a very solitary thing, and I enjoy that. I feel overwhelmed frequently, so it gives me a chance to actually spend time with my thoughts and experiences. This is another one of those. And I think one of the reasons I wanted to talk about the early influences, am I doing okay on time? Is that if you saw this image by itself, you might think of a bust or something, but with the context of the figurative work early on, I think it's really clear that this is reminiscent of a bust. And that's something that I didn't touch on the earlier pieces, but there's the way that we depict the body, and then there's the way that the body interacts with the pieces. And that's something like I carry around a little piece with me all the time. And it's something about the tactile quality or interaction with this world that I want to kind of capture and like express to people and have them touch and experience the work in a way that is, like the tangibility is really important. And I found like at museums you can look, but you can't be a child. You can't go touch things and experience them. So for me, it's important to have that tactile nature. And then the last portion I want to touch on is just the public work I've done. These are 2 large pieces in Salt Lake. It's a really interesting venture to do public work because glass is large, it's heavy, it's fragile. So to make something that's bulletproof is a really like fascinating challenge. Again, I love challenges. So these are benches in Chattanooga. And then this is the piece that June was referencing at CTAC. This is a project that is based on meditation or brainwaves during meditation or prayer. So what I did was I took a brainwave that of that period of time when you're praying or meditating, and then I basically extrapolated and created this mural. So it's 84 inches by 39, so 4 by 8 essentially. It's about 1,000 pounds. But the goal was to make it feel sort of light and moving at the same time as like reflective. There's a little Easter egg in this that I haven't told anybody, but there's a piece made by Duchamp. I don't know if you Duchamp, but he's one of the like early 20th century artists who is really formative for what we know as art now. Like anything can be art, but then it's like anything can be art, He did a piece where he dropped three pieces of string on the floor, and he traced those lines and then set them in a box. I think they're the Tate Modern now. But it was like capturing this exact moment that could never be recreated. So I made these the same height as his strings, basically. That's that same line. So a little Easter egg for you. And then these are the pieces I just finished at Western State Hospital in Lakewood, not far from here. They're a grouping of 6 seats, or kind of benches. They're cut from one single column, and I really wanted to have this idea, even if it's not present there, that we're really cut from the same cloth. Like we're all very different, but we're more similar than we are different. And I put these groupings, there's 2 in the back, 3 in the front, and 1 off to the side. And I created like a polished top and then a waterfall front edge, and then face those edges forward, because I wanted to convey that when you talk to people, you converse, you sort of burnish away that exterior, and through communication we can make community and connect. And then, so this is the final chapter. I just got back from a trip to Japan, and I wanted to just talk a little bit about where I would like to go. And that is basically, I'm showing this picture to say, they take materials and honor the history and their like identity in many ways. And this is a giant block of cast crystal that cracked. And typically that's a bad thing, right? Like glass broken, bad. This is actually, if you don't think of it that way, is really beautiful. It's inherently a beautiful line. So they've just taken off the slight sharp edges and made it as a step to enter into a sacred place. So it really honors that moment in the material. And this is the same. It's just a chunk of lead crystal that was like broken, and they put a piece of wood across, and it acts as like this barrier. That's it. It's nothing. It's not trying too hard to do anything other than coexist with the things around it. And to me, that was seeing things like this in the design. Every design element they do was poetic and inspiring. So in my previous work, some of the work that you've seen, I would say there's like a cleanliness, there's a tightness, and a I don't want to say force, but it seems like they're needing to be together. And these materials were really inspiring to me because they still coexist, and it's not this like tension in the same way. So that's sort of where I'd like to head in the next body of work. That is a QR code if you would like to go sign up for my emails and find out more about my work. All my stuff's online, so that's that.
Right, again, all three amazing artists. So thank you to the artists so much for sharing. So, and thank you to all of you for coming out here tonight. And this was a great introduction to Tacoma of your work. Everybody needs to see your work. So thank you. Well, thank you for coming. Have a good evening, and we'll see you next month, I hope.